would go over the carburetor a little bit, and then today I'd like to review what that's called the pilot system, and that's what's used for starting the engine. This is a VM38 Mikuni carburetor. I bought this one in 1973, so I've had it a long time, had zero problems with it. Just to start off, let me zoom in just a little bit here so that maybe you can see the details better of what I'm trying to describe. I'm not real good with video, so bear with me. This screw right here, where the pencil points, is the air screw. On my carburetor, if I screw this in till it seats lightly, when I turn it out 7/8 of a turn, it's perfect, a perfect adjustment for my machine. And that's why I recommend that anyone who has a Mikuni and is starting it for the first time, lightly seat this screw and then back it off one turn. And that's a good starting point for starting the engine. This screw right here is the idle adjustment screw. And that screw simply has, I'll take it out here, it has a beveled end on it. See if you can see that. The end is beveled, and that rides against a ramp cut in the throttle slide. And when you screw that in, it pushes against the ramp, which raises the slide up and increases the idle speed. That's very simple. That's just the way it works. This is the enrichment lever. Some people call it a choke, and I noticed that the newer Mikunis have the word choke stamped onto the lever. I always say that it is not a choke, that it's an enrichment system. That's what they call it. But I guess they stamp choke on it to try to alleviate some of the problem. Most people think of it as a choke, so okay, I'll give up. It's an enrichment system, though, is what the official name of this is. And when you start the engine, you always press this down first. As soon as the engine starts up, you want to raise that up. And what this does, there's a plunger beneath that rubber boot, a plunger that goes down into the body of the carburetor in here. And when we engage the enrichment system by pushing the lever down, it raises the plunger up off its seat, which opens some passages down here in the lower part of the carburetor, and I'll get into that in just a second. Let me take the float bowl off. This uses 4 screws to hold it in place. I've already removed 3 of them just to make this go a little bit quicker. Now, I'll back up just a second. You see this hole here where the pencil is. Down inside there is a jet. It's called the air jet. And on your Mikuni, that air jet should be a number 2.0. You may be able to get that out, or you may not. It's got a screwdriver slot in it, but it's going to be really tight, and it's going to take a full 6 turns to get that jet out of there. Now, the reason for removing that jet is to make sure that that hole in the jet is open. It takes a number 61 drill bit. Now, a number 61 drill bit, for those of you who are familiar with drill bits, is a tiny drill bit. It's 39 thousandths in diameter, and to use it, I'll put the carburetor down for a second, talk about this. Here's the drill bit, and if you can see that, and it is small. I'll put my thumb against it for the background. And I always use a pin vise. That's what this is called. If you unscrew the end It has a chuck in it with a different size on each end. It's a split collet chuck. And a pin vise comes with 2 of these collets, which gives you a total of 4 different sizes. So you can see that one, you could put an 1/8 inch drill bit in that one. And the other end is the smallest, and you can put the 61 drill bit in that. Now, I recently had a member who sent me his Mikuni. I tried to help him. He couldn't get the bike started, and I tried to help him out and kind of reach wit's end. So the only thing I could suggest that he send me the carburetor, and I'd take a look at it and see if I could find anything wrong with it. Now, Ben had told me that there was no opening down here in the air jet. He said it was closed off. I had a hard time believing that. But when I got his carburetor, I did find that the jet had no hole through it. Now, it had either been covered over by someone trying to remove the jet, and the ears burred up and covered the hole. I could never tell exactly. It's hard to see down in there. So I removed mine just to check the size on it. And of course it was a 2.0 designation, and it was a number 61 drill bit would go right through the jet. So what I did on Ben's was I put the number 61 bit in this pin vise, and I turned his carburetor up like this. And I inserted that drill bit into the hole till it touched the jet that was closed off, and then I completely inverted the carburetor, and then I slowly rotated the pin vise in a clockwise direction until it broke through the closed jet. And then I just extracted the pin vise out of there, tapped the carburetor on the side. Some brass shavings fell out. I did not put air in there to blow the brass shavings out because I didn't want to blow anything deeper into the carburetor. So I patted it like that, and a few little chips of brass fell out on the table. And then the next thing I did was I put this Mikuni on my machine and decided then to see if it would start at all. And I did a video of this. Some of you have probably seen that video. I think I titled it Starting My Engine with Ben's Mikuni or something like that. And the engine started right up with the first kick, which doesn't surprise me because that's the way a Mikuni is. So we'll get back to these parts that I was talking about. This is your fuel inlet. Your gas hose out of the petcock connects onto this. And this spigot here is an overflow. And the one on the other side is identical, and it too is an overflow. You'll have some little plastic tubes that push on here, and they hang down, you know, below the float bowl a little bit. And in the event that the carburetor flooded and the float level came up too high, these would be overflows. And I think they also act as a vent too. Now I don't know if you can see this. Probably not, but down here there are 2 holes. There's a small hole here, and there's a little larger, well, it's not a larger, it's a smaller hole yet in here. And the one back closest to the slide is called a bypass. And the small one up towards the engine is going to be where our air and fuel mixture come in to start it. So on the bottom there's another large hole here, like a 1/4 inch in diameter. There's a jet down in there also, and it's got a screwdriver slot in it. You can remove that if you're very careful. Put a good fitting screwdriver into that slot and turn it out, and it's going to take about 6 turns to get that out too. And that will be your pilot jet. The pilot jet has a hole through it, and it takes a number 48 drill bit. So I don't have one here with me, but that is a 48 drill bit is 76 thousandths, 0.076 in diameter. The 61 drill bit that cleans out the air jet, that is a 39 thousandths, 0.039 diameter for the hole in that. Here's your main jet. And the main jet, it should have a number stamped on this face of it. And that number should say 330. That's the proper size main jet for your Mikuni. So going back to the starting, when we start the engine with the Mikuni, the first thing you do is turn on your petcock, of course. And then the next thing is you push the enrichment lever all the way down. And that raises the plunger, as I said before, in these passages. Air is drawn in through the air jet, and it comes past the air screw. Now the air screw does just what it's called. It adjusts the amount of air that's coming in through this passage here. If you screw it in, you make the mixture richer because you've cutting down the amount of air that comes into the carburetor. If you unscrew it, you make the mixture leaner because you're allowing more air to come through. So the vacuum is what pulls this air through, and that's why it's so important to start the engine with a completely closed throttle so that you develop as much vacuum as possible in this area of the carburetor, which is on the engine side of the slide. We're pulling through these little holes that I mentioned down here, the bypass and the other passage. The fuel is drawn in, and as the vacuum pulls, you see this tube right here. Now that's got a hole going through both walls and a hole here going through both walls of the tube. We know where the air comes in, so where does the fuel come in? If you look on the bottom of your float bowl, you'll find a hole right down here. If I can get some light on that and see that. The fuel is drawn from the float bowl. It's drawn into that hole and it goes up this passageway. That's that large hole that we've got in there. It's where the fuel comes up. Now, the tube, the mixing tube, drops down into that large hole. So the fuel is drawn through these holes and this tube up into this part of the carburetor. And at this point, it mixes with the air. And because the enrichment lever is down, the plunger has been raised so that fuel and air mixture that's essential to get the engine started, it mixes together and it is pulled out of those two small holes with a closed throttle when you crank the engine. As soon as the engine starts, you want to lift the enrichment lever off, which drops the plunger down, and that closes off the air passage that we use to get it started. So after it starts, then there's another part of the carburetor internally that takes over the running. And again, some carburetors have accelerator pumps on. The Mikuni does not. But the air and the fuel comes out of these two holes into the engine. As the throttle is turned further on and the slide raises up out of the seat, that allows more air to be drawn in from the intake in, and